Part 1, the silent language everyone speaks. There is a conversation happening all around you right now. It has no words. It needs no translator. It is older than language itself, older than writing, older than civilization. It lives in the way a person tilts their head when they are uncertain. It lives in the half-second pause before someone answers a question they were not expecting. It lives in the direction a person's feet point when they are standing in a room full of people. Most of us walk through life completely blind to this conversation. We hear the words people say and we take them at face value. We assume that what someone tells us is what they actually mean. And then we wonder why we feel misunderstood, why relationships fall apart without warning, why we sometimes sense something is wrong but cannot explain why. The truth is, human beings are not nearly as mysterious as we believe. We are, at our core, remarkably predictable creatures. Every single one of us carries patterns. Emotional patterns. Behavioral patterns. Psychological patterns that repeat themselves across every relationship, every conversation, every moment of stress or joy or fear. The person who seems completely unpredictable to you is simply someone whose patterns you have not yet learned to read. This is not about manipulation. This is not about gaining power over others. This is about something far more valuable, genuine understanding. The ability to walk into any room, sit across from any person, and within minutes begin to feel the shape of who they really are beneath the surface. To understand what they need. What they fear. What drives them. What they are not saying but desperately want someone to notice. Think about the people in your life who seem to have a gift for this. The friend everyone opens up to. The leader whose team would follow them anywhere. The stranger at a party who somehow makes you feel like they have known you for years. These people are not magic. They are not born with supernatural gifts. They have simply, whether consciously or not, learned to pay attention in a way most people never do. Attention is the foundation of everything you are about to learn. Not passive attention. Not the kind of half-listening we do while scrolling through our phones. Deep, intentional, focused attention. The kind that says to another human being, without a single word, "You matter enough for me to truly see you." And the moment a person feels truly seen, they open. Every single time. Without exception. So before we go any further, before we talk about signals and patterns and the architecture of human behavior, we must start here. With the decision to actually pay attention. To slow down. To stop performing your own side of the conversation long enough to genuinely receive someone else. That single shift, from broadcasting to receiving, will immediately change every interaction you have. Part 2, the architecture of first impressions. Within the first few seconds of meeting someone, your brain has already begun building a model of who that person is. It has noted their posture, their eye contact, the pace of their speech, the way they entered the room. It has compared all of this against thousands of stored experiences and generated a feeling. Scientists call this thin slicing, the brain's ability to extract enormous meaning from very thin slices of experience. These rapid impressions are often more accurate than conclusions reached after hours of conversation, because in those first unguarded seconds, people have not yet had time to construct their social mask. What you see in those opening moments is often the closest thing to the unedited version of a person you will ever get. The first signal is energy. Not mood, energy. Mood changes by the hour. Energy is something deeper. Some people enter a room and seem to occupy more space than their body physically fills. These are externally oriented people. They draw fuel from the world around them. They think out loud. They process through interaction. On the other side are people who create a subtle boundary around themselves the moment they walk in. Not coldness, containment. They are internally oriented. They observe before they engage. They think before they speak. Understanding which type you are dealing with in the first 30 seconds changes everything. The externally oriented person wants you to match their energy quickly. Pull back and they read you as cold. The internally oriented person needs space and slowness. Push too hard and they close completely. The second signal is the baseline. Every person has a natural resting state. Before you can detect deviation, you must first establish what normal looks like for this specific individual. Skilled communicators use opening minutes not to impress, but to quietly calibrate. Because once you know someone's baseline, every departure from it becomes valuable information. Part 3. What people reveal when they think no one is watching. The most honest version of a person exists in the moments between moments. Not when they are speaking. Not when they know they are being observed. But in the pauses. In the transitions. In the unscripted seconds when their attention drifts away from managing their own image. Consider the microexpression. It lasts less than 1/15 of a second. It is completely involuntary. And it tells the truth in a way that words almost never do. A flash of contempt before the smile covers it. A flicker of fear before the confident answer begins. A brief shadow of sadness before the person says they are fine. You do not need to be a trained psychologist to notice these. You simply need to slow your own internal noise enough to actually watch another person's face while they speak, rather than preparing your own response. Beyond microexpressions, there is the language of self-comfort. When people are anxious or under emotional pressure, they instinctively touch themselves in small, subtle ways. They touch their neck. They rub their collarbone. They press their lips together. They adjust their collar. These gestures are the nervous system self-soothing in moments of stress. When you see several of these appearing together, you are watching someone experiencing discomfort they are not expressing verbally. Then there is the lower body. The face is where people most consciously manage expression. But the feet are almost entirely forgotten. Feet pointed toward the door while someone says they are happy to stay. Legs bouncing beneath a table during a conversation that appears calm. Weight shifting backward during an agreement the person does not actually feel. Remember, you are never looking for a single signal. You are looking for clusters. One signal is noise. 3 signals pointing in the same direction is a message. Part 4. The hidden drivers behind every human decision. Nobody does anything without a reason. Even the most irrational seeming behavior, when examined closely and without judgment, reveals its own internal logic. Its own hidden architecture of need, fear, memory, and desire that has been quietly building for years. The person who picks a fight over something painfully small is rarely actually upset about that small thing. The person who goes completely silent in a group is rarely simply tired. The person who overreacts to a minor criticism is rarely actually bothered by the criticism itself. Human behavior is almost always about something living beneath the visible surface. And until you understand what that something is, you will keep misreading people in the exact same ways. Every human being, regardless of culture, age, background, or personality, is navigating the same handful of fundamental needs at all times. These needs shape every decision, every reaction, every relationship whether we are conscious of them or not. The first is the need for safety. Not just physical safety, emotional safety. The need to know that this conversation, this relationship, this environment will not damage them. When this need is threatened even slightly, everything else shuts down immediately. A person who does not feel safe cannot think clearly, cannot connect genuinely, cannot receive what you are offering no matter how pure your intentions are. Before you can reach anyone, they must first feel genuinely safe with you. Warmth is not optional. It is the entire foundation. The second driver is the need to matter. To be significant. To know their existence registers meaningfully in the lives of the people around them. This expresses itself in wildly different ways. Some people chase status relentlessly. Some become extraordinarily generous. Some become difficult or demanding, because conflict at least confirms they have an effect on the world. Underneath all of these very different behaviors lives the same question: do I matter? When you make someone feel the answer is genuinely yes, you give them something most people around them are quietly starving for every single day. The third driver is the need for connection, for belonging, for the felt sense of not moving through this world completely alone. We are tribal by nature. Isolation is not merely uncomfortable for human beings, research consistently shows it is physiologically damaging over time. The person who helps us feel even briefly less alone becomes profoundly important to us almost immediately. When you begin seeing behavior through the lens of these three drivers, even the most confusing and difficult people in your life begin to make complete and compassionate sense. Part 5. The Art of Making Anyone Feel Understood. Everything we have explored until now, the silent language, the first impressions, the unguarded moments, the hidden drivers behind human behavior, all of it leads here to the single most powerful thing one human being can do for another. Making them feel genuinely, completely, unmistakably understood. Not agreed with. Not complimented. Not offered solutions or advice or reassurance. Simply understood. Received exactly as they are, without editing or judgment or the constant pressure to be something slightly different. There is a profound difference between listening and making someone feel truly heard. Most of us have experienced conversations where the other person was technically listening, they were quiet, they were present, they were not interrupting, and yet we walked away feeling entirely alone. And we have also experienced those rare and remarkable conversations where something completely different happened. Where we felt the other person actually receive us. Where our words seemed to land somewhere real, to actually matter, to visibly change something in the space between us. The difference between those two experiences is not technique or skill. It is presence. True, complete, undivided presence. Real presence in a conversation means you have temporarily suspended your own agenda. Your need to appear interesting or intelligent. Your instinct to fill every silence. Your impulse to fix the problem or relate by immediately sharing your own similar experience. All of that, as completely natural as it feels, is actually a quiet form of absence. Because while you are doing any of those things, part of your attention is resting on yourself. And people feel that truth immediately, even when they cannot find the words to name it. The practice of real presence begins with genuine curiosity. Not performed curiosity. Not questions asked because you have been told it is a good social habit. Actually wanting to know what it is like to be this specific person sitting across from you right now. What does the world look like from inside their particular experience? What have they carried and survived that quietly shaped who they are? When curiosity is genuinely real, the questions that come from it land in an entirely different place. They feel like invitations rather than interviews. And human beings almost universally accept that invitation, because almost universally we are quietly waiting for someone to be truly curious about us. The final piece is simple reflection, capturing the emotional truth of what someone shared and giving it back in a way that shows you actually felt it. That is the whole art. To see people so fully and so clearly that they feel, perhaps for the first time in far too long, that they are not alone in this world. Part 6. The power of silence in conversation. Most people are deeply uncomfortable with silence. The moment a pause appears in conversation, they rush to fill it. They add unnecessary words. They change the subject. They laugh nervously or repeat something they already said. This instinct is completely understandable. Silence feels like failure. Like disconnection. Like something has gone wrong between two people who should be communicating. But the truth is almost exactly the opposite. Silence, used with intention and comfort, is one of the most powerful communication tools available to a human being. It signals confidence. It signals that you are not desperate to perform or impress. And most importantly, it gives the other person something extraordinarily rare in modern conversation, genuine space to think, to feel, and to go deeper than the surface answer they had already prepared. Watch what happens when you ask someone a meaningful question and then simply wait. Not awkwardly. Not with visible impatience. But with calm, open, genuinely interested waiting. Most people, after a few seconds of silence, will go further. They will move past the rehearsed answer and say something they had not planned to say. Something truer. Something that actually matters to them. Because the silence communicated that you were not in a hurry. That you had room for whatever they needed to bring. There is also the silence of deep listening. When someone is sharing something painful or vulnerable, the instinct of most people is to immediately respond with comfort, with advice, with their own related experience. But jumping in too quickly, even with the most caring words, can actually interrupt the other person's process. It can signal, without meaning to, that their pain makes you uncomfortable enough that you need to fix it quickly rather than simply sit with them inside it. Learning to be comfortable in silence changes your entire presence in conversation. People begin to feel that you are someone they can actually breathe around. Someone who does not need them to perform or be okay or wrap things up neatly. And that feeling, the feeling of being allowed to simply exist without pressure, is something so rare and so deeply needed that people will seek you out again and again just to experience it once more. Part 7. Reading the room before you speak. There is a skill that separates truly effective communicators from everyone else. It is not vocabulary. It is not confidence. It is not even intelligence. It is the ability to read a room accurately before saying a single word. To walk into any environment and within moments understand the emotional temperature, the unspoken dynamics, the invisible hierarchies, and the collective mood that is shaping every interaction happening inside that space. Every room has an atmosphere. You have felt this your entire life even if you never had language for it. You have walked into a party and immediately sensed that something tense had happened just before you arrived. You have entered a meeting room and felt the weight of unspoken conflict before anyone opened their mouth. You have walked into a home and known within seconds whether the people inside were genuinely at peace or simply performing peace for the benefit of visitors. This ability to read environmental atmosphere is not mystical. It is observational. It begins the moment you enter a space, before you engage with anyone specifically. Where are people positioning themselves physically? Are they leaning toward each other or creating distance? Is the laughter in the room easy and relaxed or slightly too loud and slightly too frequent? Are people making eye contact with each other freely or are there invisible walls being maintained behind polite smiles? Group dynamics follow patterns just as individual behavior does. In almost every gathering of people, there is someone who functions as the emotional center of gravity. Not necessarily the loudest person or the most senior person, but the person others glance at when something uncertain happens. The person whose reaction subtly sets the tone for how everyone else responds. Identifying this person quickly gives you enormous insight into the group as a whole. Before you speak in any group setting, calibrate. Match the energy of the room rather than imposing your own. Enter at the emotional temperature that already exists and then, only gently and gradually, guide it in the direction that serves the conversation. People who read rooms well never feel jarring or out of place. They feel like they belong everywhere they go, because they take a moment to understand where they are before they decide who to be inside it. Part 8. Why people lie and what they are really saying. Understanding deception is not about catching people out. It is not about becoming suspicious of everyone around you or turning every conversation into an interrogation. It is about understanding one of the most deeply human behaviors that exists. Because people lie far less out of malice than we assume. And the reason behind a lie almost always reveals something far more important than the truth that was hidden. The vast majority of lies told every single day are what researchers call prosocial lies. Lies told not to gain advantage but to protect something. To protect a relationship from unnecessary pain. To protect a sense of self that feels too fragile to expose. To protect another person from a truth they do not yet have the emotional resources to receive. When your friend says they are fine and they clearly are not, they are not deceiving you out of dishonesty. They are protecting themselves from the vulnerability of being truly seen in a moment of pain. Understanding this reframes everything. Instead of asking whether someone is lying, begin asking what they are protecting. What is so important, so fragile, or so frightening that they feel they cannot bring it fully into the open right now? That question will take you somewhere far more meaningful than any lie detection technique ever could. That said, there are genuine signals worth knowing. When a person's account of something becomes suddenly and unusually detailed in specific places, that over-explanation is often a sign of internal anxiety around that particular detail. When someone distances themselves from a statement by saying things like "people sometimes do this" instead of "I did this," that linguistic distancing often reflects discomfort with direct ownership. When the emotional response to a question arrives slightly too late, as if it had to be consciously retrieved rather than naturally felt, that delay is worth noting quietly. But always remember the cluster rule. No single signal proves anything. What matters is the pattern. What matters even more is the relationship you have built that makes honesty feel safe. Because the single most effective way to get truth from another person has nothing to do with detection. It has everything to do with creating an environment where telling the truth feels less frightening than hiding it. Part 9. The language patterns that reveal personality. The words people choose are not random. Every person has a unique linguistic fingerprint, a set of habitual language patterns that quietly reveal how they think, what they value, how they process emotion, and what their relationship to the world around them truly looks like. Learning to hear these patterns beneath the surface content of what someone says is like gaining access to a private map of who they are. Pay attention first to the ratio of internal to external language. People who habitually use internal language take ownership readily. They say "I decided, I chose, I responded." People who default to external language distribute agency outward. They say "it just happened, everyone was doing it, I had no choice." This distinction reveals not a moral judgment but a deeply held belief about personal power and control. The person who speaks externally is not weak, they may simply have learned through experience that the world is largely beyond their influence. Understanding this helps you communicate with them in ways that feel genuinely supportive rather than accidentally shaming. Notice also the tense people naturally gravitate toward. Someone who lives primarily in past tense, who anchors most of their conversation in what happened, what things used to be like, how things were, is often a person for whom the past carries enormous emotional weight. Someone who lives in future tense is oriented toward possibility, toward what could be, toward the version of life not yet arrived. Someone who speaks predominantly in present tense tends to be grounded, sensory, and experiential in their orientation to the world. Listen for the emotional vocabulary a person uses. Some people have an extraordinarily rich and nuanced emotional language. They make fine distinctions between feeling disappointed and feeling let down, between being anxious and being afraid. Others have a very limited emotional vocabulary and use the same few words, fine, good, bad, upset, to describe the full spectrum of their inner life. This difference does not reflect intelligence. It reflects the emotional environment someone grew up inside of and the degree to which feelings were named, discussed, and validated in their early life. When you learn to hear language at this level, every conversation becomes a quiet and remarkable revelation about another human soul.